Trevone Boykin was one of the most exciting players in college football, and I don't think he got enough love. Now, with the college football playoff expanding, he didn't get that opportunity. And we're going to start a new series for this channel. We're going to take a look back at some of our favorite players in college football, and Trevone Boykin is definitely one of them. And this is a guy who came to TCU as kind of an unknown, which is kind of weird to say when you look at what he was able to do in his time at TCU. This is a guy who we didn't really know for a couple of years, and we kind of just remember him for his 2014 and 2015 seasons, but it started before that. We're going to take a look at the college football career of Trevone Boykin. Now, this is a guy who was the number 40 athlete in the class of 2011, and it feels like recruiting has changed drastically since then. He only held offers from TCU and UTEP, and now obviously hindsight is 2020, but when you look at what he did, it's crazy to think that he only had two offers going into college. The 2011 season, he redshirts, doesn't play in any games, and that's really kind of the norm back then. You don't see as many freshmen playing as we do nowadays. So he redshirts, heads into the 2012 season, hoping to get more production. Played in 9 meaningful games in 2012 as a redshirt freshman. The 56-53 3 overtime loss to Texas Tech. He played a big role in that. He was 26-44 for 332 yards with 4 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. I think that he is someone that we thought maybe could be exciting, or at least TCU fans thought could be exciting. You just didn't see the consistency with that. And when you look at what he did overall, he threw for over 2,000 yards. He threw 15 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. So you thought, okay, well, this guy has potential. We just don't necessarily know if he can clean things up. He also ran for 417 yards and 3 more scores. TCU goes 7-6. In 2013, he plays 6 meaningful games. We kind of see a little bit of a rotation there. The best game that he had was a 20-10 loss to, once again, Texas Tech. Kind of seeing a trend there. He was 23 of 36 for 194 yards and 2 interceptions, but he did run for 101 yards, averaged 5.1 yards per carry. So you're seeing some glimpses with Trevone Boykin, but nothing really that crazy. You see a guy that has potential, but nothing that's really going to say, hey, this is going to be a star. He finished the year with less passing yards, 1,198, 7 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. So that is once again a problem. But he did run for 313 yards and a career high at that point, 7 touchdowns. So I think that you're looking at a guy who is hoping to take that step. But so far, we've seen 2 years of that not being the case. So TCU fans may wonder who else is going to step up. But then you get to the 2014 season, and I don't know if anybody saw this coming. I think there was plenty of returning talent, and TCU fans thought this could be the year that they have a good year, get back to a bowl game, but I don't know if anybody saw this coming. This is the first year of the college football playoff. No one's picking them really to do anything. They're not ranked in the preseason top 25. Most were picking Oklahoma or Baylor to win the conference. TCU was actually they're projected to finish 7th in the conference. So that kind of gives you an idea of where this team was supposed to be headed. The big games that we'll talk about, we'll start at the beginning of the year. The 37-33 win over the aforementioned Sooners, a team that was projected to win the conference. He has a big game, 20 of 38, 318 yards with 2 touchdowns. He also ran the ball 22 times for 77 yards. And Trevone Boykin was one of those guys that wasn't necessarily going to run for hundreds and hundreds of yards every single game, but his legs were a problem. We also, everybody remembers the 2014 TCU Baylor game, the 61-58 loss to those Baylor Bears. Boykin wasn't really that much of a factor. 21 of 47 wasn't great. 287 yards with 1 touchdown, 18 carries for 45 yards. When I was putting this together, I was kind of surprised that that was his stat line for whatever reason. And probably because 2014 was just so, everybody remembers him as such a great player. That game was really surprising, but it was still a thrilling game. I think everybody was really excited. I think a lot of people go back and watch that game from time to time. But you saw the glimpse once again. You saw the Oklahoma win where it's, hey, Trevone Boykin can be this guy. But then you have kind of a disappointing follow-up, even though your team had a thrilling ability. I think if Trevone Boykin played better, that's probably a TCU win, and they still almost won that game. The next 2 weeks, he absolutely explodes. So we talked about the Texas Tech losses in his first 2 seasons. First, you start with a 42-9 win over Oklahoma State. Boykin was a monster. 26 of 39, 410 yards with 3 touchdowns, 41 yards rushing. 82-27 win over Texas Tech. 22 of 39. You're looking at a guy who was absolutely phenomenal. 7 touchdown passes in that game. 82 points is just unreal. That's something that we didn't really see and have. I mean, we don't really see that very often at all, but he had a profound impact on this game. We saw his ability, and then we get to kind of the postseason, the aftermath of the 2014 season where Baylor and TCU tie for the Big 12 title. They get snubbed from the playoff, and then they basically just take it out on Ole Miss and absolutely stomp the Rebels in the bowl game. 22 of 31 for him, 187 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 65 yards rushing. Kind of a disappointment and in terms of his production, but overall the team just absolutely took it to Ole Miss back in the day when people actually cared about bowl games and they were actually meaningful and players actually took it seriously. But Trevone Boykin, a great year in 2014. You look at his production, 61.2 completion percentage, 3,901 yards, 33 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. So again, the interceptions, not great. We talked about a couple of those games, but throwing 33 touchdowns kind of erases some of those concerns. 707 yards on the ground, 8 touchdowns rushing as well. So you're seeing an increase every year in rushing touchdowns. You're seeing the increase this year in passing touchdowns. TCU goes 12-1. They win the Peach Bowl. He finishes 4th in the Heisman, and he was a first-team All Big 12 selection. Then you go into the 2015 year, and compared to the year before, this is a much different offseason for TCU. They're preseason number 2 because Boykin returns. You also have Josh Doxson and a number of other big players that are coming back as well. Boykin is the preseason Heisman favorite, so this is a guy with a ton of hype coming into the 2015 season. The first game of the season was rough, to be completely honest. A 23-17 win on the road against Minnesota. I remember watching that game and thinking, this is not going to be a great team if they keep playing this way. Minnesota was not a team that should be competing with the number 2 team in the country. Yes, their defense was stingy, but this is a team that should dominate. Boykin finished 26 of 42 for 246 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, had 92 yards rushing with 1 more score. And I remember looking at that game and watching it, and Boykin wasn't going to get tackled. He wasn't going to get in poor positions. Now, Minnesota did throw him off a little bit, but overall, Minnesota didn't really have an answer for him when he decided he actually wanted to take care of business. After that, Trevone Boykin goes on a tear. So any concerns you had about TCU going into the first game of this or after the first game of the season were kind of erased. The next 7 games, he threw for over 2,600 yards with 27 touchdowns. He ran for 432 yards and 5 scores. So he took things seriously. TCU averages 52.3 points per game, but the big concern is that they allow 25.6 in that same stretch. So not great, but you see the offense taking strides that we know they're capable of taking. I think that you look at that stretch as well, and it was a thrilling stretch for this team and Boykin. Everybody remembers the miracle against Texas Tech. 24 seconds left. Boykin's trying to find Josh Doxson in the back of the end zone. The ball is tipped, and running back Aaron Green is somehow in the back of the end zone and somehow drags his foot to win that game. I go back and watch it. It's absolutely worth your time. You also have the viral moment of him, meeting the little girl who was in the wheelchair and the Iowa State game. You're seeing a different side of Trevone Boykin, and as he's playing well, he's having good moments before games and technically off the field. It's not really off the field when it's at midfield, but you get the point. You also have the high five, the infamous high five with Dana Holgorsen running around. West Virginia can't tackle him, and he escapes for a big gain and walks over towards Dana Holgorsen, daps him up, and it's a viral moment that I think everybody remembers. He was an absolute problem, and that 7-game stretch was peak Trevone Boykin. The 49-28 loss to Oklahoma State is kind of where the beginning of everything unravels a little bit. He was 35 of 57, 1 touchdown, 4 interceptions. He ran for 73 yards and 2 touchdowns. That was a number 14 Oklahoma State Cowboys team that was also looking to get in the playoffs, so that was a big one. The game was 42-16 heading into the fourth quarter, so that was one that Oklahoma State basically took control of right away, and TCU just didn't have the answer. They also then lose 23-17 over a winless Kansas team. Boykin actually gets hurt. His right ankle gets hurt before halftime, and he also missed the Oklahoma game, which they also lose. So again, everything kind of is just unraveling. He returns actually to spoil Baylor's Big 12 hopes and gets revenge for the 2014 loss. His ankle was super heavily taped, didn't have really any chance of being himself. And then after that, he gets suspended in the Alamo Bowl. Before the Alamo Bowl because of a bar fight. And then obviously we know what happens after. We're not going to dive into what happened after college and his legal troubles, obviously. But on the field, Trevone Boykin was thrilling. And the 2015 season, kind of a similar thing. You see the theme once again with the interceptions. 3,575 yards, 31 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. You also see him rush for 612 yards, so we took a little dip there. But he was more efficient, averaged 5 yards per carry, and he increased his touchdowns to 9 for the season, which was a career high. So you look at what TCU did, 11-2. They make it to the Alamo Bowl. He finishes 10th in the Heisman, a second-team All Big 12 selection. So he throws for over 10,000 yards, 86 touchdowns. The 37 interceptions were probably his biggest problem. He was a 32-16 record at TCU, rushed for over 2,000 yards and 27 touchdowns. This is a guy who was extremely fun to watch. Obviously, not without his flaws, but he was someone that is worth remembering. He is someone that if you talk about Trevone Boykin to the casual college football fan, they're probably going to know who you're talking about. They're going to know the feeling they get when you talk about him. And if you go back and watch some of his highlights, this was one of the most thrilling quarterbacks in college football. A guy who, again, his first few seasons, we didn't really know who he was, burst onto the scene in 2014 and 2015. And it's really hard to not think about what this team could have done in the playoff, especially in an expanded playoff, let alone in the 4-team. But this is a group of players that, with Trevone Boykin leading the way, was really exciting. The TCU offense was humming. We saw some things that I think a lot of people thought were really fun to watch. And Trevone Boykin was easily one of the most memorable players that you can talk about as a college football fan.